Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. See, I changed it up just a little bit so I wasn't completely ripping off the Truman Show, but we've got a new jam thing, stuff. Shanama Jamma Jam? Pajama Jammy Jam? We're doing hot takes.
We're doing hot takes. This was me having a moment, and I'm gonna hop right into what I consider to be something that's good and bad for 40K all at the same time.
Brian started yelling at me. This is why we're doing hot takes.
It is 100%. Is playing by intent the worst way to play 40K?
I'm gonna start. We'll go back and forth. This is how we planned on doing this. However, neither one of us usually shuts up, so we'll just go until we peter out just a little bit.
Yep.
And then go from there. So I'm gonna start with what is playing by intent, because I think that this is my opinion on intent. I think most people playing by intent incorrectly. Playing by intent for me is, this is what I'm trying to do: measure out, making sure that thing is actually physically able to be done, and then explaining to you what I'm trying to do, having that social agreement with, I'm moving here, I've measured your pieces, then I've measured mine, you can't see me, I'm trying to block out your deep strike, I pulled one of your bases, you can't fit there anymore. And why I say this is because models get bumped, things get, you know what I mean, dice hit a model, somebody hit the table, whatever happened. We already measured out all of these things. I know how far you move. Hey, I'm going to put my model right here. I'm 1.1 away from the wall. You can move 6. You could advance possibly 6. And this is what your charge would be. Cool. Do all of these type of things for me are playing by intent. Playing by intent is not just going, hey, I don't want you to be able to shoot me. Hey, I don't want you to deep strike. Well, no, you have to go, hey, this is physically able to be done. Excuse me. But the table's the table, man. The cooler the terrain, the more chances there are that your models fall, tip, whatever. You roll dice, things hit, everything else. That's what intent is. Now I'm giving the board back. I'm gonna move the piece over. Tell me, and this is the thing, is I think that your normal playing by intent is significantly different from what I just said.
Yep. So the thing that I see, now this is coming from a judge's perspective, not a player's perspective for me. Hey, my intent is to line up so I can shoot you and draw a line of sight. Great. Yep, sure. Go ahead. So they set everything up. They get everything in position. And then the guy comes over and he goes, oh, yeah, but my intent was not to be seen, so there's no way you could do that. And you were like, and you agreed to it on the previous turn. And the guy's like, yeah, well, that was before I moved. Your intent was to not be shot when I didn't move. And then there's an argument that ensues. And they bring a judge over to the table. And the guys go, oh, yeah, well, I intended to not be seen. That's why I put him here. And then my thing is, well, during your turn, right? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, he moved. He can clearly draw a line of sight. Well, I wouldn't have put him there if I could have known that. And I'm like, that's not intent. That's, you didn't want to be shot and you didn't put your model in a spot where that could happen. Not my fault. And he goes, well, he agreed to it. And the guy goes, I agreed that during his turn, I couldn't overwatch him where he sat. I couldn't shoot him then. And you have two players who are then angry at each other because of intent, instead of taking the time and what you said, measuring out, coming to an agreement, showing, and then saying, okay, but on your turn, if you move here, can you see me? And the few seconds of doing that on your time, by the way, could help resolve some of that issues, but that's normally not what happens. And it's annoying. And I will use this as an example of putting guys on the top floor of a building going, hey, they're on the bottom floor. When it comes time to make decisions, make rulings, make measurement stuff, because they're not on the bottom floor, you've now made for a complicated situation. When you place your models, place your damn models. The intent of being somewhere, I'm 1.1 inches away from the wall. Are you?
rule sucks.
And yes, it is. I'm not disagreeing on that one, but them's the rules.
But let's be honest. Also,
rules.
that's I'll go to this one. The piggyback on that. I think that almost always you're not 1.1 inches away. At least one. Like if you ring the board, if you want to get very specific, I guarantee that somebody is an inch away. You know what I mean? Because it's just really hard to do exactly that. I mean, the intent of it is easy. You know what I mean? I want to ring the board. When you put your guys in, though, and then you want to put a squad behind that, and you want to put some more stuff, you know what I mean? That's why I'm big on, yes, you want to play by intent. I'm a very big play by intent player, but I get where you're coming from 100%. Yeah. But my thing about intent isn't just like I intend and that's just what happens. Also,
and intent's great until you call a judge over. It is
100%.
If you get to a point where you need the judge and everything was by intent the entire game and things were going good, but now something got touched, something got hit, you picked a building up to move for measuring terrain, whatever the case might be, and you call judge to check range, check something, and a guy comes over and goes, well, my intent was to be 1.1 inches away, and I come over and it's like, well, he's touching the wall.
I think that's
he
different.
Can charge.
What do you do when it's something's been moved, though? The players just tell you, we picked up something. Because that happens quite a bit. That's my whole point, is that's why I say that I'm on the other side on intent, because...
if you have a good gentleman's agreement and you continue to play by that gentleman's agreement for the game, it's fine and it's good. But the second one player doesn't, it fucks the whole game up. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
I give you that. But my problem is that it's always going to be a game where you could say that somebody did something, because you're going to have to move a piece of terrain. You're going to pick something up. The dice are going to hit the buildings. You are going to have things fall over. Some guy just bumped the table. You know what I mean? You're playing in a row of tables. Somebody hit something. You know, that's why I'm saying that's why I feel you have to have some intent. You know, maybe it's levels of, but you can't just go that this is the law, because shit just gets moved. So you deploy on hills and shit like that. But again, the best looking terrain is oftentimes the worst for that, because beautiful terrain often has levels and designs and things, and your models are a lot of times precariously on that.
And I think that's part of the reason the WTC style terrain, the very thin, the equivalent of MDF, but not MDF, it's made out of a plastic foam, is ideal for 40K because flat surfaces, easy to put stuff down. I actually like that if you get it from the company that makes the WTC terrain, the Weyland-Yutani out of Europe, you can actually buy 1-inch bottom floor spacers for the bottom floor to go, hey, you're 1 inch away. Why? Because that bottom floor is 1 inch wide. As long as you're behind that, not on it, you're behind 1 inch. There are a lot of things that as a TO you can do to make players' intent better. Which that's one of the things. I mean, it's hard, it's expensive.
We're actually going to hit that in a minute. We'll hit that. We've got 2 takes today, and the second one will be that. And I don't want to segue complete right away with that. Transfer over.
But I think intent is, if you can keep it throughout the game, it's an okay thing for the game. The minute one player goes off intent, both players then have to be precise, exact, and everything. I'm going to use this as, it is physically possible for me to do X. All right. Deep strike my models in here, be able to draw a line of sight to your one model in your unit, but your entire unit can't see me back. If the other guy comes over and goes, it's physically possible, go ahead and place him. And when he's done placing them, the guy goes, well, you didn't place correctly, so therefore it wasn't physically possible. I'm going to overwatch you and shoot you with my entire unit. And the guy goes, well, we agreed that the intent was for me to have behind so you couldn't see. And he was like, yes, but you didn't do that. That
right. Was your choice and that's the thing, though, is that I think that's the problem, is that you don't just declare the intent. You have to measure out whether it's possible.
Yeah. And
then actually do it. You have to implement. Yeah, but that's my biggest thing is that Yeah, it has to be somewhere in between what we're saying, though. You can't just
Yeah.
YOLO into the world and say, I don't want to be seen, or I don't want to be charged, or I want to be whatever. But
Yep.
you
You have
also can't
to.
just go,
And
whatever's exactly that, because again, the game happens, man.
you
You're
have
you
to place the models.
you're
You have to do it correctly.
Yeah, well, you're gonna do both though. But I'm saying you have to
Yeah.
also, life happens on the game. Like I said, models tip,
But
models fall,
this
models
is
whatever.
yeah. But when you say my intent is to do this, and then you don't do it, and the guy goes, "Hey, you didn't do that, so therefore I'm going to do this." You have to immediately stop and go, "Okay, let me see if it's physically possible. Give me a second to adjust." And if the other guy goes, "No, no, no, you put the models down, it's done," you now know you're not playing by intent.
Oh,
Right?
100%.
That's
Well,
where
you also
playing
have to.
by intent to me is one of the tough things, because both players have to agree that the intent is there, and you have to have that gentleman's agreement on the tabletop. And it doesn't happen as often as we would like. If play by intent was always the case, everyone agreed, and then, hey, just to let you know, I can see those, you might want to fix that, was the response back, instead of, well, you didn't do it, I'm going to shoot you. That's one of the things.
Yeah,
You have to have
there's a middle ground,
both
though.
players playing by intent.
Yeah.
There's a nice middle ground where everyone works together and does things correctly.
Right. That's my whole point is that you
Yep.
have to go, let's measure everything out before we do anything. Should be the case all the time.
Mhm.
Because you can't just the problem is that people do things, they go, I want to do this, and then they just do it, and it's not the thing that they said.
Yep.
You can intend to do anything. I intend to be very tall. It didn't happen. So but what my thing is like, I have to get you involved in the game. Hey Brian, you can go 10 inches. I want to be behind this terrain and have you not be able to see me. Let's go ahead and measure this out. Can it actually happen? Oh, your unit's too big. You're trying to make the diamond, the right behind the piece of terrain. I guess it'd be the triangle, whatever. Shapes. I'm going to make a shape behind the terrain. Who cares? And then you're like, no, you've got 10 guys. So like you can't, I can always see the end or whatever. That you have to measure those out before. Also, have other models measure things. Don't move models and move back. That drives me crazy too.
Yeah.
That's a separate separate video.
And that's one of the tough things is you can come to an agreement, but then when you do it and it's not physically possible, the other guy can specifically say, well, then that's not possible.
But
Are you staying there?
No, but you have to. That's what I'm saying. You have to do this first, though. You and I are playing, and we measure it out before we get that agreement. Okay, let's measure first. Okay, do we both agree this is possible? You go, no, it's not. Your tank hangs off. You know what I mean? It's too far out. Blah blah blah. And then I go, I can either still make that move or I can make a different move. That's why you measure first before you make those decisions. Dice it up, especially if you tank. I like to have just extra guys all the time, which I typically do. You know what I mean? I have random shit, or even a unit that hasn't been deployed yet. You know what I mean? Move some shit and go, hey, if I put it here, do we both agree you can't see me? Yes, no. No? Okay, well, let me do something else. Or you know what I mean? Or the other thing is do you have the movement to do that? You know what I mean? And that's go ahead.
What a lot of times I run into this, right? I have a player that I know who is a precise player. Everything he does, he measures every model painstakingly. He doesn't do intent at all. He places his model, does it, and when he's done moving, he's done moving. That's his thing. He's like, I have measured this out. He's done all his own move, pre-measuring in his head. He'll take the tape measure, measure out what you could do, and then he does his turn. And when you go, if you move 12 inches and you put your 12 down and put the guy down, he's not going to say anything back to you. He's just going to let you go. And if you're like, oh, well, my intent was to do that, he was like, well, that's not where you put it. You're done. Because he believes that the game is precise measurement, movement based, no lax.
But you can get in between those.
As long as you understand that going in and playing this gentleman, that's the game you're going to play.
Sure, and that's not bad though either.
It's not a bad thing.
But you have to know
like
But the thing is that you can still be super precise and do exactly what I was just saying, because we'll
You
pre-measure
can.
you pre-measure everything. That's why you don't just throw models out and then
Yeah.
ask for, you're effectively asking for a permission at that point in time. No, just go,
Mhm.
hey, you're playing the game with another goddamn person. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Interact with that person. We're supposed to be
Mhm.
enjoying a social interaction. I'm
Yeah.
not playing a war game on a computer. I have another person with me. I'm hanging out.
Mhm.
Uh, if I want to do something and I want that agreement, well, I want you to come, let's
And you
get that
know,
agreement.
when that agreement starts, hi, my name is,
Yeah.
shake hands. Just to let you know, I'm going to ask to play by intent. It doesn't mean I want to play a sloppy game. It doesn't mean I want to play a messy game. It doesn't mean I want to allow a million takebacks. I just want to say, I'm going to move here. I'm going to play some stuff to look to see without moving the unit itself. I have some extra models over here. And then we're just going to check to make sure things are right. Is that okay with you? And if the person goes, absolutely, I'll do the same thing. Great. Now you have a great gentleman's agreement. You set up your whole game to have that fun. If you, again, if the guy goes, that seems a little bit like a lot of time and a waste of things, you can go, all right, well, I'm going to measure and I'm going to move stuff. I guess we'll just play that way. You have to have that agreement at the beginning of the game and talk about it at the beginning of the game, not halfway through the game, not, during the middle of the first turn, to get play by intent to work correctly. And you still have to physically move things right and do everything correctly so you have a good game. I'm just saying that playing by intent is there and it's possible, but the minute someone doesn't do it, it ruins the experience for every player.
I'll give you that, but I think that there's different levels of playing by intent where I'm trying. It's not even just what I'm intending to do. I feel like I want my opponent to know what the hell I'm doing, period. So whether I'm playing by intent or not, I want to explain what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I over talk through half my turns out loud because I'm a crazy person. So like I'm gonna move here because I want to do this, this, and this,
Yep.
and go into it. And I think that's important also. And I'm probably the wrong person on this because I get yelled at all the time by my team and the fact that I let anything happen. Because when I do though, if I
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like I'm trying to lose any games. It's just I also don't want to win a game because you forgot something or you
Yeah.
screwed something up.
I get yelled at from people because I always remind people, hey, you forgot to do the primary action.
Yeah, same thing.
You
All that
you
kind of little stuff.
you forgot to. Did you want to move that unit? Was your intention to leave it back there? And they go, oh shit. I was like, you had a 2-inch charge here with your melee unit. You charged over there, but you didn't charge over here. Did you want to do that charge before you fight that? Oh yeah. Okay. So
Same.
those little things because I want people to have a good game.
Well, you want to have a good game, but also I don't want to win on a technicality either. You want to have that sense of accomplishment of I won because my skill, the dice, whoever. Luck, I don't care. Just a little
Yep.
bit. You want the day to be yours, not because
Yeah.
you forgot to file put your TPS cover your TPS report. So I think that's a big deal. And the thing is that playing by intent doesn't mean you get to play willy-nilly sloppy. I think
Right.
playing by intent means you're trying to get the social agreement with is do we both agree that the move I said I want to do is possible? And do we agree that you're going to help me make that move, I guess, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because hey, and the thing is that
Hey,
you're not go ahead.
drawing a line of sight's the big one, right? Because that happens a lot. And I'm going to go back to, I'm trying to deep strike this unit in. I want everybody to be able to see, but I don't want every one of your models in your unit to see. Can I line this up so only, let's say, one crisis suit can shoot me?
Especially
The
when you're
guy
talking
goes,
about flamer units and shit, like you're with full rerolls,
right,
obviously.
right. So all you got to do is go, can you hold the laser pointer up
Exactly.
on your model and draw the line so I can place so we can have this, so this works? As long as the other guy goes, absolutely, you've now solved the whole problem. If the other guy goes, yeah, place your stuff, you should be able to do that, and then goes, all right, well, I can see you. That's not what the intention was, and it causes. Again,
I mean, that's also a douchey
play
move
by
at that point
intent
in
is a
time.
but play by intent is a 2-player thing. If both players aren't doing it, it's not good for the game. If both players agree and do it and have that social contract, it's good for the game. you have to make sure you have that social agreement, and you
Yeah.
have to make sure that both players stick to it.
And here, you know
If
what?
you don't, that's when it becomes a problem.
I'm gonna, if we were live right now, I would put it on a poll. I want into the comments, everybody, intent, good or bad. And I think the
Yeah.
problem is that you have to say what is intent.
Mhm.
I think that I've had this with pajama. I've had pajama
again,
pants and Corona, and I have had this argument.
Yep.
Not even argument, it's just a discussion because they're like, it's super bad, blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, but this is what I think intent is. And they're like, other people aren't doing that as their intent. And I go, okay, but like, all I want to do, I want to have fun, period. You know what I mean?
But you want to have a fun, clean game and people agreeing to things. You want the social contract. And you want technically a precise game with measurements that are possible, but if something gets moved a quarter of a millimeter this way or that way, we still came to an agreement. It's fine.
Correct.
That's what you want. If that is what intent is, and that is how intent is used, intent is fine in my opinion. The minute you have that social contract and it's broken by a player, intent becomes terrible.
You're also looking at it as from a judge, I guess.
Right.
You're looking at intent from a judge's perspective.
And
I'm
again,
looking at it from a player perspective.
Yep. And if intent is, I'm going to grab a handful of models, throw them here and go, okay, so the movement is, so I block you out. Well, that's a sloppy game. That's not what intent is supposed to be.
A lot of times, to be fair, as someone that's 3 feet tall, I have my opponent. If you've ever played me before, you move my models for me.
Yes.
Especially, love you, Joe. I can't read shit on half the stream tables. You know what I mean? So that's one of those things where I have to have an opponent. And to me, luckily, I really think that 90% of the 40K community is awesome.
I'm going to say it's 95. I actually think it's even higher.
Probably. I'm just saying I play a lot of 40K and I've played it for a long time. Same thing with yourself. Yep. Almost all of my games are just a good time. We have the stories of the random things, but those are so few and far between. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we're talking decades of playing and you have a handful of these random shitty stories. You're like, oh.
And as I will always put this, because as a judge, you see more games, it's just the case, right? Where if you're a judge and you're watching 50 tables, right? You're seeing 50 games going on 5 times in a weekend, a lot of games, right? I see all the good and I note it and I can tell you what players that's a fantastic person to play against. You're going to have a great time. I can tell you what players I'm going to get called judges for. I know what players are not the greatest to play against or who are poor sports, salty, whatever. And you learn over time of how to stem that stuff and look at it. And, players learn from their judges on what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and everything else. And if you set good, rigid standards as a judge, it helps a lot. But sometimes it always gets away. You can't see everything at every time. Again, 1 judge for 50 tables. If you're lucky, 2 judges for 50 tables. I would love to say that, hey, we could have an event with a judge at every table, but even I know that's physically impossible when it costs $8.7 billion for the event. But if playing by intent is a good social contract and it's a kept social contract, it's good for the game. If any player doesn't have that social contract down and they have an understanding of what that social contract is, it makes the game bad. I'm not saying it's bad for the game. I'm saying it's one of those things of you have to have that contract. It has to be signed by both players at the beginning, and there has to be an understanding. The minute someone breaks that, it just makes for an awful experience.
I can't argue that. I just you win this time, Mr. Horton. I don't know. I want to have a good time. I enjoy having a couple drinks with my friends and playing with my toys. And most of the time I'm having a great time. I want to be wearing a giant Harlequin hat and doing some dumb shit.
99.8% of the time, that is what happens. But it's those 0.02% that the internet goes crazy on. And as long as you, again, that social contract, and I will continue to say that, if you have that, and at the beginning of the game, and it's discussed, it's talked about, it's agreed upon, and everybody sticks to it, it's good for the game.
I will.
Unfortunately,
I will.
unfortunately,
Yeah. I,
when it gets broke, it really is bad.
yeah. I will tell you this: that you don't have to play the game for the other opponent when you're playing by intent. I get yelled at
Yeah.
this, and I've done it. Same thing. Both of us have been yelled at.
Oh yeah.
You know, if people make mistakes, it's not your job to correct it. That it is a big thing. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's
All right,
go.
so
Let's go to the next. I have it. So you brought this up, and I do think that it's something worth talking about. I still think it's something we should talk maybe about in 10th edition, which is terrain is the biggest rework needed for 11th edition.
absolutely.
And I don't understand. I do understand. Okay, this is a hot take that we're probably both on the same page on, but it's a big deal in this because we have the same terrain. We have buildings and buildings.
Yep.
And
Short, tall, medium, tiny, maybe a crate, maybe.
well, I wish we had more crates.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I wish, and I'll give the guys at FOG, they used to use them a lot. We used to have crates. I love a crate because it's impassable. You have to go around it. It blocks line of sight some, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's a workaround thing. It's not just a you can go through this or you can go through here. It had special rules for being on top of it. If your base could fit on top, so like basically jump infantry could jump over. It offered a different dynamic.
Yep.
But we have nothing. We don't have pipes. We don't have
So there are rules in this game. And at the beginning of the edition, I was slightly excited because I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna build like this big giant box full of pipes that I have. I'm gonna get stuff together because there's some benefit of cover to things. It allows for some movement stuff. Vehicles can move over it. It seems like it's fine." And then GW comes out with their first, Leviathan tournament pack, and it's here's your ruined city. Every war in 40K is played in a ruined city.
close quarter ruined city too.
Yeah.
The big for me, the big thing is, and I'll give it my quick take, and this is going to be a lot different than yours and everybody else's probably. I would love to see a lot of those different pieces. Just make the different pieces have some line of sight blocking, and we could use them, and they could have better rules for them. Pipes, statues, just things that have cooler. We used to have so much more dangerous terrain and stuff like that, and everybody's going to throw tomatoes at me for that one. Everybody that's rolled a 1 and got their stuff immobilized or killed. But like terrain had different reasons to play it. You know what I mean? Your flamers got more. You got slowed down here. I mean, difficult terrain used to just mean it was difficult terrain. Dense terrain. I mean, forests. This is going way back, but like I loved when forests were. I could see in 2 inches. I could shoot in 2 inches. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And stuff like that. And certain people had actual special rules that said, "Oh, I get to actually shoot 4 inches in because I have the forester keyword." I think Pathfinders had but you had like different pieces, and that's when we had shittier terrain. By the way, that's a way back in the day.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, as a TO and a long-term TO, I have a very deep terrain pile. Like I legitimately have an entire storeroom full of terrain that I'm currently not using. Is a good way to put that. It's a lot of terrain because it just doesn't currently work in this edition. The AdMech terrain, which is absolutely gorgeous terrain, GW did a beautiful job designing that. It just doesn't work because it's awkward. It's a lot of holes. It's really not ruins. I mean, you can put it on a base and call it ruins, which is perfectly fine and acceptable as far as I'm concerned, but it just doesn't have innate rules that work competitively.
But if you had stuff like that, and you just said that basically not even all terrain, most terrain, what we do now, we have almost everything's obscuring. Just make terrain in general, you can't see through whatever the shadow of the base is. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then we could have more cool rules with our terrain, because right now terrain is terrain.
If you're then on the base of that terrain, normal line of sight rules apply. If you can see them all, you can shoot them all.
Yes.
Which would be great because then you can be off the terrain, move onto it, see through a bottom floor, which I know is taboo for some reason.
Oh yeah. Well, also this Holy Within shit is so, and I exploit the shit out of it constantly.
Everyone
But
does.
like the fact that I can see your tank, but you can't shoot your tank because you're not all the way in the
Yeah.
piece of terrain that's probably smaller than you are. Like what? Like what? Why
Yeah.
not?
Well, when was the last time you saw a Baneblade on a table? And I think that's 60% of the reason, maybe 80% of the
Well,
reason.
at least those
Wait,
guys can toe.
100%.
No, those guys can
Yeah.
toe touch. Think about
Those
your
they can toe touch because they have Titanic.
yeah. Think about your
Rogel
Rogel
Dorns.
Dorn. Think about your Rogel
Yeah.
Dorn. You so your giant tank can't see over this tiny piece of, you know, think about GW1, GW what is it, 6, and just any of the ones that has the tiny pieces all the way at the bottom.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't see through that. Why?
Yeah.
I'm touching it. Well, now you got to be Holy Within. It's literally a third as big as I am. Yeah, sorry, man.
A a 2-inch piece of ruin I can't see over.
Speaking of that, the small knights and stuff like that, towering over things. My thing is that we need a little bit more interaction. What I want, I don't even need it.
Yeah.
I want it. I want more interaction with my terrain.
And I know that there's some people are going, well, then turn down the lethality of shooting a little bit, which I'm, again, maybe that's another conversation to have. But terrain, if we could just get some, here's terrain pieces, here's your bases. These are the rules for those bases, and then you can put whatever you want on it. Right? Let's use this
stuff.
I would love to use this as an example. I would love to fight in a forest with my Catakin jungle fighters. Because they're not fighting in the heart of the city. Right?
Settle down, you little Ewoks.
So if I take all the GW bases and I put trees on all of them, right? And I just go, those are the GW ruins. They have the rules. They're just trees because they look cool and it looks fantastic. And I've cut everything out and made it look pretty. And then I've got like shrubs for the 2-inch area, right? Does that work for people? Right? Because you're using the rules. It's thematic. It'll look awesome.
I would just like, I just think you'd.
But you're they don't have
make the base just obscuring.
Yeah.
It just that solves a lot of problems and would let us have a lot more things. You know what I'd love to have? A giant ass Imperial statue right in the middle of the board.
Yep.
Just give it a U, you know what I mean? Make it obscure, give it the base, give it a base and then slam down the statue and go, that's inspiring. Yes, it's a nonsense. It's +1 to leadership. Who cares? But like, I don't know. It's cool. You could, if you're gonna fight like in city, fight in an actual city. You know what I mean? Or something that's like super cool with monuments and cool shit. I mean, like imperial cities have just like a bananas amount of propaganda bullshit everywhere. Their whole grandeur. If you're in an Eldar city, have craft world. You're fighting on a craft where you're fighting on a hell, you're fighting on a Crone world, you know what I mean? Even the maiden worlds and stuff like that. And they should all be different.
I think if, like, obscuring's a thing because of the way the edition works and the lethality of terrain. Obscuring's a keyword that needs to be there for the base of X number of terrain on a thing, right? Perfectly fine. With the way that Leviathan has terrain laid out. Those 4 little, what are they? The 4x6 pieces of terrain. Those don't need to be obscuring on all of them. They are 100%. That's the way GW has it designed. But man, it's not necessary.
Give it a different rule, man.
Give it a different, give it -1, -1 to ballistic skill, -1 movement going through it. Those are its 2 rules.
You mean like an old forest? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. We've made something at least different on a table, even though it's 4 small pieces. Hey, the 2 what are they, 10 by, not 10 by 5s, the was it 8x4 pieces, the long, the smaller of the there's 6 10 by 5s or whatever it is, 10 by 6.
You can make
can make those have open floors on the bottom of the ruins,
right?
The rest have closed.
Yeah, you're obscured behind. And then if you get in it, you're a -1 to hit, or you're tough, and you're difficult terrain, or whatever. Give it random rules.
Something.
I mean, you can do random. Oh, there's so many things you can do on that.
And I think hey, look, if you're gonna make a terrain rule, that terrain rule stacks on top of other modifiers, right? So that way it actually has gameplay.
I mean, think about ninth. I mean, just defensible and shit like that.
Yeah.
I I really thought at the end of ninth we were using a lot of stuff. We were using a lot of cities still, but we were doing a lot more
Yep.
with terrain rules. And I know they're trying to simplify it down. But what was their thing? They're making it
Simple but not simple.
yeah. So, and yes, you want more people to be able to play and pick it up, but like you should have options to make the game as simple or as complex as you want. I mean, it's a complex game with all of the factions and
we have more people coming into 40K now than we ever have before. Secret Lair, Warhammer Plus, all the YouTube stuff,
Space Marine 2, you know,
Space Marine 2, your podcast that is immensely popular.
40K Lorecast.
40K Lorecast. I have people coming into the store all the time, and I will grant you, we are a relatively, niche market. But I have people coming into the store that I'm like, well, that's not a 40K person. That's a person going to get art supplies. And they come in and they're like, they walk up, hey, I want to get into 40K. I read this thing and listened to this podcast and I want to start AdMech. And my brain goes, great, let's get you going on AdMech. We'll start with a combat patrol and get you the stuff you need to go. And then I'm like, how do you want to play the game? And the guy's like, oh, me and my buddies were going to play narratively at home. And I immediately know that it doesn't matter what this guy is going to buy. We're going to talk lore. We're going to have a good time and have fun. And then when I have new people come in going, yeah, I want to get into the tournament scene and have a good time. And I see the guy with like a psychophage in his hand because he wants to play Tyranids. And I go, well, let's talk about other units that'll work better for you in the meta. And it's awesome. It's cool. It's fun. And the guy who comes in to play narrative, I have terrain for. The guy who comes in to play competitive, I have terrain for as a store. And it's tough because you're like, oh, those narrative guys just, they're like, oh, the narrative guys don't come in and, play in the competitive events. And I'm like, yeah, because they want to play for fun and narrative. And they don't think tournaments are that. And we have to show them that tournaments are fun while being competitive. And the way to do that is by having diverse terrain rules and making things more interesting, because I've heard this from people who are old school competitive players who come into the tournaments now like to observe and see things because tournaments are going on during store hours and go, man, it just looks like a city fight. Is that what every table is? There's no difference. There's no differentials.
It's funny because Pete was gone for a decade and has just came back and he's, hit the ground running. But we talked about this, and one of his biggest things with today's 40K, and this works into the terrain a lot, is everything's the same all the time.
Yep.
We used to go into tournaments and you would have to have an army that was ready to face weird scenarios, different terrain, and everything else. I now know that for sure I'm going to play on a cityscape under pretty much regular rules. And I understand why TOs do this, because when people put in the wacky missions, everybody loses their shit. You know what I mean? Remember when they ran Kick the Soccer Ball, Servo Skulls, and it's a goof mission, don't get me wrong, but the community went crazy.
Yep. Look, as someone who uses, and look, 2 years ago, if you came to Du Bois, there was a chance you played on the cargo crate table, which was legitimately a shipping yard. It was an entire table of cargo crates stacked.
It had the crane though
all over the place. Had cranes. It was a very thematic, fun table. It was laid out very similar to a GW style table, but it was cargo crates, and it specifically had the terrain rules of these are fucking cargo crates. And then it was 9th edition, and the guy was like, I played against Harlequin, and the guy had flip belts, so it didn't matter.
I do remember that game. I was there.
I was like, oh, well, yeah, I didn't think about that. And he was like, he goes, it was fun. It was a good time. But he goes, but that happens when you have different tables. Look, Du Bois used to have every table unique. There was 0 repeat tables at one point in time where we just really went hog wild. And there was, every different type of table, and you had to be prepared for there might be a time that I get on a table that is a little bit of a shooting gallery. There might be a time where I'm on a table that has so dense impassable forests, I have to really plan moving around things.
People are
Tournament players seemed like the serious tournament players hated that.
Yep.
But man, I think there's a niche there, like now in this edition, to where you can have those unique different things. And the minute you do that, you go, it's a 40K narrative event.
Yeah, I mean,
And then
I
you have
guess.
a little bit of army construction rules, a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit to hone things in to prevent serious abuse. And which, by the way, if I'm running a 40K narrative, the rule of 2 immediately comes into play because I think that's a nice way to fix it without being messy. And you will have a good time that way. And then the missions are written for the table, not for the round. So when you go to a table, this is the mission for this table, and it's designed that way. But that's an entirely other thing.
And that's a big thing, you know. And I'm going to leave this. I'll end this with this. In comments, everyone, what would you like to see as far as terrain rules, but also what would you like to see as far as scenario slash just the table itself? You know what I mean? Do you want table rules? Do you want everything to be homogenous? Do you want to have to be able to react and whatnot? And I'm curious to see what everybody thinks about this. So,
Absolutely. I'd love to hear it.
and this is the first of the hot takes. Well, I'll be producing this. I'll be putting this out. I don't know. Apparently, I was gonna cut my newest album and produce it. Jesus, I'll edit that out. So, the guy's an idiot. So this is the first of the hot takes. I'll be putting them out on Thursdays, and we're ready. I hope you guys like them and we get a good reception. If not, yell at us and I'll be sad and I'll try to fix it. So with that being said, Queens, wave us out of here, and we'll see you on the next recording.